Hello everyone. Let me just, I think I'm goofed up. Let's see if that works better. I think so. Okay, there we go. Awesome. Welcome to Hormones Balance Live Questions with Magdalena on Fridays. And, so how it works, it would be great if you could just say you're here and tell me where are you from and where you're listening in from. And today I would love to continue the conversation about estrogen dominance and its connection to breast cancer, because it is the breast cancer month awareness, as they call it. I talked about it last week, that I think we should be moving away from just awareness to real prevention. And so just come and say hello. Tell me where you're listening in from. And there's a bunch of questions that actually came in last week that I wasn't able to answer, just because when you do things live, it's a little hard as the questions are just flying in. And sometimes as I'm in the middle of saying something, it's hard for me to do two things at the same time. I also want to tell you about a very special giveaway I want to offer to those of you who have gone through breast cancer, whether you've been diagnosed in the past, whether you're still going through that, through the treatment, through protocols, or whether you are in remission. It doesn't really matter. So my special giveaway this month is I want to offer you completely for free 20 seats to my iconic online program called Cooking for Balance. And it's basically a 4-week program that teaches how to eat to rebalance your hormones. It's I think it's a great program. You know, we've had over 3,000 women who have gone through it. Women really love it. We address everything from health, from the gut health, liver function, really important for estrogen, and sugar levels, right? And so there are specific protocols for estrogen dominance, with recipes, with guides, with life support from us. So what I'd like to do is to invite you to a website on hormonesbalance.com/sprouts. Let me just make sure that I got that right. I set it up last night. It was late, and so I want to make sure I got a sprouts and not sprout. I think it's sprouts with an S. And it's basically a form. Yes, it's correct. It's sprouts. It's basically a form that I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your story. Keep it short and brief, and tell us what kind of nutritional changes are you willing to make. I want to make sure the program really fits you and is something that it will be good for you. So giving it completely for free to those of you who have been, like I said, diagnosed with breast cancer, you just diagnosed in the past, if you're in remission. And so that's my gift for you for this community. And let's see, one of the things I would like to do is to answer questions that you guys posted last week that I just didn't get a chance to talk about. And so just come and introduce yourself. Tell me where you're listening from. Just come and say hello. It's always nice to hear that you guys can hear me okay, and and that's my point of interaction with you, which is always awesome. So there are some really cool questions that came in last week, and let me read them out. From Susan Milborn. She said, "My mom had her thyroid nuked and it's still getting nodules. Could this be estrogen dominance? She's also had a hysterectomy." Great question. There's two main things that's coming up for me here. When you say thyroid nuked, it typically happens when we have Graves' disease, when the thyroid becomes overactive. And that happens a lot of the time when actually it's the immune system that starts attacking the thyroid. And because of that attack, the thyroid becomes overactive. I actually had Graves' disease in my late 20s. And so, so that's the first thing to note, is that there is a possibility that she has autoimmunity going on. And I strongly suggest to test for it. She can test for the antibodies. Just because the thyroid is removed, it doesn't mean she's not going to have high antibodies. And what I do see with women who do not address autoimmune diseases fairly quickly, oftentimes it becomes another autoimmune condition further down the road. Not a fun thing to experience at all. So be proactive about it. If she had a hysterectomy, I wonder why. Very likely it was because of estrogen dominance. And so oftentimes women get hysterectomies done because they have polyps, because they have fibroids, because they have cysts. And so Western medicine's way of dealing with issues is just to remove an organ, right? I don't know, you know, not a vast way of dealing with things in my world. And I hope you agree with that. And so, because if you're not really addressing the underlying cause of what is causing that estrogen dominance, right? You remove the uterus, but then like what she said here, she's still getting nodules. And for some women, it's even worse because they end up having breast cancer as the leading cause is estrogen dominance. So those of you who are listening live, just tune in and say hello. Tell me where you're listening from. So yeah, so that was a great question. So I hope I've answered that, Susan. Denise Schroeder is saying, if once estrogen dominance confirmed, are you always going to be that in the future? Great question. You know, I think some women have a bigger tendency than others to have estrogen dominance. In fact, next Saturday or Sunday, I'm talking to a person who is a genetist, and she's going to talk about what are the things that you can look at in your 23andMe, which is your DNA test, in order to identify whether, what are your risks for breast cancers, but also how much of an estrogen metabolizer are you, which I think is really fascinating. Hi there, Mona from Phoenix, Arizona. And so, you know, I think it's just really, so for example, she actually did my reading of my 23andMe. In case you're new to this, it's DNA testing available. You go to 23andme.com. And the cool thing about it is that when she was deciphering my DNA, she said to me, she says, you know, Magdalena, you're a slow estrogen metabolizer. And that really hit a spot with me, because I have to tell you, like, if I don't take care of myself, hi Gina from Idaho, Southwest. If I don't take care of myself and my estrogen dominance, I get PMS from hell. So if I drink coffee, I'm stressed out, I'm traveling a lot, and I'm not eating as cleanly as I could or should be, then unfortunately, you know, I immediately feel it. And if I continue doing that, then it will manifest with things like breast lumps, which I have a history of as well. Hi there, Deb. Deb is saying, hi from Vancouver, Canada. So if I have estrogen dominance, I have endometriosis. Does this make me more of a candidate for breast cancer? I'm 40 years old. Thanks, and what can I do to stop it? So, great question, Deb. The answer is yes, it does make a big difference. And, you know, like what I mentioned, endometriosis is an estrogen dominance symptom, a very common one. And like I mentioned last week, majority of breast cancers are estrogenic cancers. There's a very small percentage of cancers that are due to genetic mutations called BRCA1, BRCA2. So yes, what can you do? Listen to last week's one. I talked a lot about foods. I'm going to talk a little bit more about foods this time around as well. But one of the things that I would suggest to do right away is sign up to cookingforbalance.com. Great workshop. I talk about there the role of the gut in how your digestion breaks down estrogens, a specific subset of bacteria, and what to do about that. I talk about the liver, and I talk about sugar levels and how all of that play into estrogen dominance. So that's a really great starting point. Check that out. Thank you for sharing. And let's see what else. Brenda Ifiel is asking, is broccoli sprouts, which you mentioned earlier, that good for estrogen? Absolutely. So I talked about estrogens, broccoli sprouts. Hey Deb, yeah, welcome. So broccoli sprouts are just these little tiny sprouts. I just used them up in a smoothie this morning, so I can't even show you. But broccoli sprouts are these little tiny guys that are made out of broccoli seed. And that seed, you basically sprout it. You can get it in a lot of health stores, including Whole Foods. I've seen them at Sprouts. I've seen them at Trader Joe's. And you can really make it yourself. It's really simple. If you just look at how to sprout things, just Google it. It's really super simple and really cheap. So one of the powers of broccoli sprouts, and there are actually medical studies that show that women who eat a cup to a cup and a half of broccoli sprouts every day have their nodules on their breast, as well as breast cancer, actually shrinking. It's unbelievable but true. And that is largely to a substance called sulforaphane, that is found in a very high composition in the sprouts. Sprouts are like a concentrated version of broccoli sprouts. Broccoli. Broccoli also is a cruciferous. It's going to support your liver. It's got sulfur in it, which is also great for metabolizing estrogens. But there's the broccoli sprouts that have significantly higher, and I cannot remember right now, but it was something like between 16 to 20 times higher levels of sulforaphane as compared to broccoli. So really awesome stuff. Suscatville is asking, what is the good makeup product to use? Is Tarte a good makeup line to use? I've never heard of Tarte. You know, you're going to look at their website and kind of see how transparent are they with their products, where they're getting things from, what's exactly in it. Every time I see a website that it's not very transparent about their ingredients, that gets me always worried. And so, you know, I personally use a lot of stuff from Anne-Marie Janice because I just feel like I can really trust them, and the product is super clean and their makeup is beautiful. Donna is asking, Donna Laguerre, and by the way, Gina Torre, I love broccoli sprouts. I'm glad you do. I'm curious, tell us, how are you using broccoli sprouts in your daily life? I'm curious. Donna Laguerre is asking, does having high stress contribute to adrenal fatigue and breast cancer? That's a really great question. High stress contribute to adrenal fatigue? Absolutely, yes. And it doesn't have to be just stress from, like, you know, working a long hours, but it can also be emotional stress. It can be trauma from the past, unresolved trauma. You know, like having something happen to you in a childhood that you still think about on a frequent basis. A person, it can be a job, it can be spiritual stress. Having a lack of purpose can be incredibly stressful for some people. How does it contribute towards breast cancer? So let me just explain the connection. This is really important. We're going to be talking more about adrenal fatigue as the time goes, and I think in December we've got some content lined up for adrenal fatigue. What's interesting about adrenal fatigue is that cortisol, which is the stress hormone, is produced from a precursor hormone called pregnenolone. And pregnenolone is like the main hormone, and then two hormones are produced from that, cortisol and progesterone. And so when you're in times of stress, whatever pregnenolone the body has, it will basically go through a pathway where it has to decide, do I produce cortisol to sustain the stress and get her through it, or do I produce progesterone so she can get pregnant and look good and sleep well? The body would always choose cortisol first. It's a survival method and mechanism. And so what it does is you are robbing yourself of progesterone when you're chronically stressed out. And by the way, that stress can also be digestive health. Digestive issues can also be causing, cortisol spikes. Sugar levels, coffee can make adrenal fatigue much worse, and constantly, because coffee is stimulating, so anything that's stimulating is gonna be having your adrenals pumping out the cortisol, right? And so all of those is gonna be robbing you of progesterone. And one of the things that I talked about last week is that estradiol, which is that aggressive, the antagonistic estrogen, needs to be opposed by progesterone. If there is too little progesterone, that that estrogen basically is gonna be, punching you all the time. And this is, like I said, one of the leading causes of breast cancer. So let's see, what is Victoria saying? Florida girl, super high on cortisol right now. What should I do? Okay, well, the question is, Victoria, where's the stress coming from, right? And you're gonna identify that. And the question then for you is, identify where it's coming from and how can you mitigate it. So if it's your job, if it's a relationship, if it's family situation, what are the causes? Something important to look into, and then work a plan around it. So share that with us. Deb is saying, Victoria is saying the hurricane. Well, okay, well, that's temporarily. It's not going to be there forever. And yes, my heart goes out to all of you in Florida. I'm actually even surprised that you are here on a call today, but that's maybe that's a good way of just connecting to the rest of the world, and it's good to know that you seem to be safe. Deb is asking exactly what I've given up coffee for a year now. Well done, Deb. Yes, that's a great thing to do. Okay, Victoria saying she was just teasing. Okay, well, so I had a serious question. Where's the stress coming from? Then going back to that question. So, Deb, really great that you gave up coffee. And, you know, one of the things about coffee and let's talk about estrogen dominance is that a couple of things. One is, like I said, coffee is stimulating, right? So it's always going to get your cortisol levels up and up and up. And then that's going to rob you of progesterone. Not enough progesterone is not there to oppose that estradiol. So estradiol is unopposed, and that does a lot of damage. So that's one thing that coffee does. The second thing that coffee does is that it impairs your methylation pathway in the liver, which is the part of the pathway that detoxifies you of estrogen, right? And that's an important pathway. So, you know, one of my favorite ways of dealing with is to replace coffee with a couple of things. And I showed it to you guys before. I'll have it here again. I think it's upside down. Oh, it's flipped, but it's a mushroom. Basically, it's a mushroom coffee. I will post the links to where you can get it. You can also get it on Thrive Market, actually, if you have a membership already. The other one is chaga, so C-H-A-G-A. It's a form of a mushroom. You can use it if you have candida. I absolutely love them because they're also kind of bitter. And my favorite way of using them is that I'll put a couple of sachets, because I feel like one sachet is not enough. I'll put a couple of these sachets in a blender, like NutriBullet or Vitamix, and with a touch of coconut milk and some warm water, or hot water, and maybe a touch of sweetener, just a tiny bit, and then blend the heck out of it, and that's really awesome. It just tastes like a latte, but without the caffeine, yet it's bitter, so it just reminds me a lot of coffee, and it's just a really nice warm drink to have first thing in the morning. So these guys the company is called Four Sigmatic. Just one more time, the packaging is here. I think they're really, really awesome. So there's a bunch of guys from Finland there's a lot of mushrooms growing out there. So Deb is saying she's on a progesterone therapy too. Okay, well, great. So that's your way of addressing things. Bianca is saying, what is the best way to manage adrenal fatigue? I suffer from chronic adrenal fatigue and IBS. So Bianca, the same question what I posed just now earlier to Victoria, and that is, where is your stress coming from? Identifying the sources. Is it because stress can be physiological, so it can be because of poor digestion. It can be because of stress with your relationship, with your job, with kids, with a housing situation. Money is a big one, right? For some people, it's spiritual, like having no purpose in life can be a source of stress. So identify where is your stress coming from. And if you want to share that with us here, then I can talk more to it. So I'm going to just do a quick break. For those of you guys who listened to my call 2 weeks ago, I talked about oxalates. And so I talked about oxalates as being the leading cause of known to be causing kidney stones, but also now we're discovering that high oxalates, more and more people are having problems with high oxalates, and they can be causing things like a lot of pelvic issues in women, like painful urination, but also pains and aches in people who've like cut out gluten, cut out sugar, cut out dairy. They don't do nightshades anymore, right? Which are oftentimes connected to chronic pain and inflammation in the body. But then you've cut out all these foods and you're still struggling with some of the symptoms I mentioned, breaking out in hives or having allergic reactions, besides those kidney stones and besides the pains and aches. In fact, some people even think I actually misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia. And so I posted a challenge saying, who wants to join me for the low oxalate diet? And I'm wondering if anybody of you has tried it yet, and how are you feeling? So if you're listening live, just post in the comments. If you're doing on replay, still post and let me know, is anybody had any relief in terms of symptoms, and try the low oxalate diet. The other thing I talked about last week is seed rotation. So seed rotation is about using seeds to rebalance your cycle. And if you're perimenopausal or menopausal, it's still going to give you a huge relief. What it does is for the first 2 weeks of if you're cycling, so for the first 2 weeks of your cycle, you use pumpkin seeds and flaxseed to help build up estrogen. And this is good estrogen. You don't have to be afraid of bad estrogen. You actually, like, even flaxseed is one of my favorite foods because it really helps you to metabolize estrogens. Not all estrogens are bad. There's only one estrogen that's highly antagonistic, and actually helps you to skew the balance towards the good estrogens. So flaxseed, having a couple of tablespoons, so 1 tablespoon of flaxseed, 1 tablespoon of pumpkin seed is a really great way of starting the first part of your cycle. If you're menopausal, you can start off anytime you want for the first 2 weeks. And then you switch to progesterone supporting seeds, and that's sesame seed and sunflower seeds. And again, 1 tablespoon ground each. And you can put it into salads, smoothies, soups, it doesn't really matter, even in a glass of water. And these guys will help you boost your progesterone levels. So I'm curious if anybody has started doing it yet. If you go to hormonesbalance.com, my website, there is an article on seed rotation that uses that very technique. And and that's one great way of if you just search for seed rotation, there's a couple of recipes that will come out and a full article that talks about what exactly goes on and why it works. Deb is saying, what's your thought on using DIM to get rid of bad estrogen? So DIM stands for diallyl methane. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I tend to work with food more than supplements just because I feel like most of us are on so many supplements and it becomes so expensive that, I still like to kind of refer to food because I feel like food is just the most natural form, and it's mostly the body loves, food as a natural source, because not only are you giving yourself, like for example with broccoli sprouts, I talked about the cup or a cup and a half a day. Not only are you helping your estrogen levels, but there's so many other nutrients that are available in there. They're so beneficial for us. And so that's why I always prefer to go to food first. So for those of you who are joining a little bit late, I just want to tell you that I'm giving away 20 seats to the Cooking for Balance program, which is my iconic program that has helped women rebalance their hormones in huge ways. We've had over 3,000 women who have gone through the program. I'm giving away 20 seeds for those of you who have ever been diagnosed with breast cancer, or you are in remission, and or you're still going through treatments. This is my way of supporting you this month, in the month of October. And so my only ask of you is for you to go to hormonesbalance.com/sprouts and tell us a little bit about yourself. And I just want to make sure that the program is a good fit for you, right? So yeah, so that's that. We also have a lot of the giveaway winners. My assistant Lisa and I just recorded a video. We're pulling out names out of the hat. So for those of you who participated in the Hormones Balance giveaway bonanza and you spread the word, thanks Wendy. Yeah, it's a great gift. I know it's, we're doing that, what we can to support the breast cancer folks. And I know one of the realizations I have to say about breast cancer patients is that insurance covers it to a certain point, and then a lot of times women are just left hanging right after that. And then the question is, then what do I do now, right? And that sense of hopelessness and confusion and lack of planning of what to do next can be really daunting. So, the whole program is not just about breast cancer, but it addresses one huge element that's going to help you manage your breast cancer health, with food. And so if you look at the estrogen dominance, is class number 2, but you should watch all classes anyway, because it's all connected. And you look at under the estrogen dominance guide, that's all you need to know on the basics of what to do to help yourself with estrogen dominance. So, so let me go over to more questions here. And those of you who are listening live, just go ahead and pop your question and I will read it out. So Rita Wagoner asks, mainly cook cruciferous if thyroid problem? Yes, that would be a good thing to do. one of the things about cruciferous is that there is not a single study that showed that cruciferous vegetables are causing thyroid failures. It's a bit of a myth out there in the world of the thyroid world. Somebody said that, and then every blogger started copying pasting that. And so, but having said that, I have come across people who would go on these healthy food binges, I call it, and be juicing things like kale and, you know, and whatever, just a whole bunch of vegetables, right? Spinach, a lot of kale, charts and all that, right? They will juice it or make smoothies out of it. And then 3 months later, they're like, uh-oh, my thyroid is not working anymore, right? I'm getting cold, I'm losing hair, my skin is all dry, my thyroid like is beginning to swell here, right? You go see a doctor, boom, TSH doesn't look good, antibodies elevated, whatever. And so do the cruciferous vegetables cause that? According to science, no. But what I have seen is that it goes back to the conversation about oxalates, is that, you know, things like, for example, spinach, for that matter, even chocolate and, you know, cacao, unfortunately, are super high in oxalates. And it's okay for, if your body is breaking them down, it's not a problem. But for some people who have digestive issues, they don't break down oxalates as well. And then what happens is these oxalates, they are a form of crystals. They like to deposit themselves where the problem area is. And so for a lot of women, they end up depositing themselves in the thyroid gland itself. And that's when the thyroid starts underperforming, it becomes underactive. So, you know, yes, so cooking cruciferous is not going to reduce the oxalates per se, but I'm just talking about oxalates in totality, but to kind of really watch don't overdo with spinach. That's like one of the big things. Everything is spinach. You don't want to do that. You want to be mixing up your vegetables as much as you can. And yeah, if you feel, you know, I think having raw cruciferous like 2-3 times a week is perfectly fine. It's just not in huge amounts. And if it makes you feel more comfortable to steam them, then please do. So Louisa Miron Holzberg is asking a really important question. I read flaxseed is not good for estrogen dominance. I think this is a really important question. I mentioned earlier. So actually, flaxseed, and if you go to PubMed, you know, my statement, just so that you know, my statements about food is not just taken off like out of the air. Neither is it taken from just working with, I don't know, 10 women and going like, oh, this is what it is, and making a statement. I really spend a lot of time. If you look at my website and the blog posts, we spend a ton of time researching the major claims that we make in the article, right? In the articles that I write. So and I have a team that helps me doing the research, right? So now the interesting thing about flaxseed is that when you say here, it's coming from some blog, that's when a dangerous situation starts arising. And I would really advise you against getting your information from blogs that have never been backed up by science, right? So can we do that? Can we just agree on that? That get your information from credible sources. So when I say credible, it's sources that use references, that research things, and don't come up with just statements that are like, oh, this is good for you, it's good for cancer. Like, what does that mean? Where did you get that from? So, yeah, so one of the things about flaxseed is that there are tons of studies that show that flaxseed helps with moving the balance towards the positive estrogens, the protective estrogens, and versus the antagonistic one. This specifically that happens with estrone is one of the other estrogens. And when estrone gets metabolized, it goes into two metabolites. One is called 2, the other one is 16-hydroxyestrone. I know it's a bit of a mumbo jumbo, but just imagine just one estrogen that gets broken down into 2 metabolites, good and bad, right? 2 and 16. And it is the ratio between those two that's really important. Well, guess what? Flaxseed, 2 tablespoons a day, ground flaxseed, helps to skew the balance towards the protective estrogen metabolite. Originally, that 2 to 16-hydroxyestrone has been used for a long time to manage women with, breast cancer risks in women. And so when I found to have breast lumps, the metabolism ratio was very poor. It was definitely towards the estrogenic, the bad one, the bad estrogen, right? And as I embarked on the whole estrogen dominance protocol, so reducing, eliminating coffee, taking care of my liver, doing liver packs, doing broccoli sprouts. I incorporated DIM as well, that somebody talked about, or Dap was talking about DIM before. It really made a huge difference. So, so I hope that helps you to understand flaxseed a little bit better, and don't be afraid of it. Before I forget, there is a subsegment of women I noticed that when they have flaxseed, it actually gets them, the PMS gets worse. And so I would say probably 1 out of 10 women I work with, and this is total anecdotal, but this is just my experience, is that 1 out of 10 women have the opposite reaction of what flaxseed should be doing. So if you're doing the seed rotation, you're incorporating flaxseed, your PMS gets better, you start sleeping better, your boobs don't hurt, you know, you don't have spotting in the middle of mid-cycle spotting. If you have hot flashes going away, right? Your bowels are moving again really well. That's thumbs up, great. But if you are getting the opposite reaction, your PMS is getting worse, your boobs are hurting more, right? You know, your hot flashes are worse than before, then don't do it. And that is the whole beauty and difficulty about food, is that one food can be one person's best friend, and it can be your worst enemy. And so there isn't an answer for everybody what to eat. And that's why one of the things that I teach in the Cooking for Balance program, if you look at that, you can sign up for the free workshop. It really is worth it. cookingforbalance.com. In the workshop, I talk about it there, the difference between eating really well and eating right. Eating well is like what you're being told in magazines and, you know, and your doctor, you pick up a book, and paleo, this, that, whatever, STD, GAPS, you know, there's all these different protocols, right? And so you're told, like, you embark on this and you're gonna heal. And then maybe you do, and that's great, but then other people don't. And the question is, why not? And such is the peculiarity of our body that I want to just give you a couple of examples here, and I talk about it extensively at the workshop, the free workshop, and cookingforbalance.com, where I give an example, for instance, of sauerkraut. A super healthy food, right? Probiotics, it's got vitamin K2, it's got cabbage, which has got all these substances in there that are anticarcinogenic. Wonderful food. I mean, everybody knows about sauerkraut. And guess what? If you're having histamine problems, if you're not breaking down histamine properly, you're going to have allergy, hives, headaches. You know, you touch your skin, it gets all red. You're going to start having, feeling really off. And that's because all fermented foods, including things like wine, for example, can trigger you. So here is a good example of how, you know, Jude saying weird, never see food bring changes to health issues. Well, I think you're missing something. Unless there's something else going on, like, you know, big bacterial infections. I see when people have very little results with food is either they don't do it properly, or there's something else going on, like having mono, having SIBO, you know, but having parasites that can be really undermining everything you do with your food. So Andrea is saying, I recently started the seed rotation. I would like to try the broccoli sprouts, but I'm not sure if I'm able to find them in my area. Okay, Andrea, so one thing you can do is get the broccoli sprout seeds online, make sure they're organic, and Google how to sprout your own things, you know. I teach that in the full program as well, different forms of sprouting, but it's really, I mean, you can just Google it and check it out. And it's really as simple as soaking the seeds for 24 hours, getting rid of the water, make sure you don't use chlorinated water, because chlorine and fluoride will inhibit their ability to sprout. And, you know, and after that, you just leave them out in a jar, and then they start sprouting. 5 days later, you've got this beautiful jar just full of these little tiny beautiful sprouts. Really simple. So let's see, Danette Diaz says, I'm going through menopause and have Hashimoto's over the past 4 months. I've been getting a lot of frequent headaches and nausea. I'm looking for a natural way to get rid of migraines and symptoms. Hey, Danette, so, you know, Hashimoto's, I had Hashimoto's as well. It's in total remission today, so I can totally relate. And Hashimoto's can wear different hats. Everyone can have a little different symptoms. So frequent headaches and nausea. One of the things you want to really address, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease, which means that it's not really the thyroid that is a problem. It's the immune system that is on fire, and it's the immune system that launches an attack on your thyroid. So concerning yourself too much with the thyroid is not going to do much. It's, you know, if the fire is being shot at by the immune system, right? So you want to kind of go after the gun and not after the bullet. And so this is where the question is, where does the immune system live? And the answer is, it starts with your digestion. So addressing Hashimoto's with a really good digestive health is the first stepping stone for that. Danette, one of the things I would recommend is tune into my workshop, Cooking for Balance. And it's, you know, I incorporated all the principles into that workshop and the program from my own experience, because that's what, you know, that's what I had, Hashimoto's. My antibodies were over 1,000, and I got them down today to be, what's the latest one I tested? I think they were at 36. They should be at 33, so I'm almost there to be totally negative, but I'm symptoms free, and to me that's the most important thing. So I hope that has helped you with that. And let's see what other questions you guys have, and let me know, where are you tuning in from? I'm always curious about that. Where are you from? Somebody from last week said, hey, Hormones Balance, thank you. I have endometriosis and get kidney stones. I would love some advice. So, Iris, I would suggest listen to the call last week about oxalates. Sorry, 2 weeks ago I talked about oxalates and oxalic acid and how it's causing. Hello, Anna from Reno, Nevada, and Crystal from Maryland. Awesome to hear from you. Marcy, let me just finish this one. So yeah, so kidney stones and how to, I mean, avoiding oxalates, foods high in oxalates is one thing, but one thing you can do is, you know, you can, I'm going to write an article about oxalates, like once I figure out my own stuff. Hey, Wendy from North California, and Danette from Bronx, New York. Yeah, so that's about that. I'm going to write more about oxalates and how to help the body break them down. It's not as, it's way too much information for a call like this. Lynn from Sang Harbor, New York. Great. So let me go back to Darcy's question. So she's asking, why is my doctor continuing to tell me I don't have Hashimoto's, but I had hypothyroidism for over 20 years? Possibly because, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is, you know, doctors like to, I wonder whether, first of all, your doctor has tested you for antibodies to rule it out. And those are two antibodies you want to rule out. One is called TPO, thyroperoxidate antibodies, and the other one is anti-TGB, so anti-thyroglobulin antibodies. Those are two antibodies you want to rule out when you make sure that if both of them are negative, you might not have Hashimoto's. So those are the two things that you're going to test to really know yourself. And by the way, in case you don't want to be fighting a battle with your doctor, just go to directlabs.com and order the test for thyroid yourself. And it's going to be, you know, equally, it's going to be so much easier, just you don't have to fight with your doctor, right? And you can then build your insurance and hopefully get the insurance money back, depending on your policy. There is a small percentage of women or people who have hypothyroidism because of, for example, having a tumor in a pituitary gland. The pituitary is what releases the TSH, and if there is something, there is growth or there's damage on the pituitary gland, then it will not be releasing sufficient TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, to stimulate the thyroid to produce enough hormones. Another reason could be that you have something going on with your thyroid, like nodules growing there, right? Or you've had a lot of x-rays done in the past, which basically the x-rays over a period of time, especially for a lot of people who've been having dental x-rays done over many years, consistently and often, the thyroid can take a hit as well. So there could be various reasons, but they happen to be, and also, of course, a diet that's very low in iodine can also be causing hypothyroidism. But generally, there is quite a bit of iodine in our diet, so that is a more of a rare case. Let's see, there's a probiotic question. So for probiotics, for the gut megas probiotics, do you have to take them forever? You know, it's a bit like, it's funny, I never get that question with multivitamins. It's like when, for those of you who take multivitamins, like I get a question, Marcy's just saying, thank you, I just had a lot of dental work, so there you have it. And I'm talking about x-rays, right? So dental work combined with x-rays. And a lot of times they don't put a guard on the thyroid when they should, and you actually have to ask for it. Believe it or not, they have that in the lab, and they just don't give it to patients, which is crazy. So yeah, so back to megas probiotics. I think the answer is yes, for as long as you feel good, and you know when you don't need them, when you stop them and your digestion is working fine, that means that you have restored the balance in your gut. If you haven't restored it, then you will feel it right away. So it really depends on the person, and depends on what is your bacterial flora right now. What foods are you eating to help promote the growth of the good bacteria, or what are you eating that is destroying the bacteria, right? How much candida is there in your gut? So really, there is no quick answer to that. You just have to tune into your body. And that's one of my big mantras, is that sometimes there isn't like a yes or no answer to things. It's really about finding the balance, about tuning into your body and figuring out what works for you. Hey, you guys, I'm trying to keep the calls to about 45 minutes. Otherwise, it just becomes way too long. So just one more time, hormonesbalance.com/sprouts. We're giving away 20 seats to the Cooking for Balance program, the full paid program. It's a 4-week program. And it's just my way of supporting women who've been diagnosed with that one of the most awful things that can happen to your life, and that's breast cancer. You are either going through it right now, you're going through therapy, and or women who are in remission. There was a question from last week. Somebody asked, if I had breast cancer once, do I have to do this again? Do I need to follow the kind of estrogen dominance protocol? And the answer is absolutely yes. Because first of all, it's not like you had once breast cancer, it's not gonna come back. If you create an environment in your body that invites cancer and creates an environment for it to multiply, then yes, the answer is it can come back, or it can come back in different forms, like uterine or ovarian cancer, which are also estrogenic cancer. So yes, do take care of that. And once you've had breast cancer once, you know that your body is predispositioned to be having estrogen dominance. Maybe it's polygenetic. I'm going to be talking to a genetist and releasing a video in probably 10 days time. So stay tuned for that. Her name is Erica Gray. She's actually setting up her own lab. They're going to be testing genetics and then explaining in very simple terms what it means, and then how to mitigate your genetic predispositions with diet and supplements. I think it's going to be a really awesome call. I'm actually super excited about talking to her, because I plan to learn so much from her as well. So Andrea is saying, this is going to be the last question I'm going to take today. Sorry, just joining. Do you have a book, a plan of foods that can reduce estrogen dominance? Yeah, Andrea, so I'm writing a book right now, but it's only going to be ready in 2018, March. In the meantime, what you can do is go to cookingforbalance.com, join the workshop. I talk about the body systems that govern estrogen metabolism. And I also talk about, in the full program, there are guides specifically for eating, and with very detailed with recipes and meal plans and stuff like that. So I hope that has helped. Thank you so much, guys, for the questions. They're really awesome. And I will see you next Friday, always at 10 o'clock, not 9 o'clock. I made a mistake last week. 10 a.m. Pacific. And that's 1 o'clock Eastern. And I'm in Mountain Time. Hey, Andrea. Yeah, you're very much welcome. It was my pleasure. All right, you guys, make it a wonderful weekend. In fact, just on that note, one of my last asks of you, 2 things actually. Do tell somebody else who you think will benefit from this broadcast, women who are struggling with their hormones. Tell them about this forum of asking. They can ask questions. And number 2, I want to ask you is if you can do something that's really nurturing for yourself, over this weekend that really is going to help your adrenals, because adrenals can be very stressed out. But if you incorporate things that make you really happy, whether it's going for a massage, going for a hike to a place you love, whether it's getting a lot of hugs and kisses, whether it's having sex and orgasm and oxytocin, which is the hormone we produce, a neurotransmitter we produce when we're having sex, and we're having hugs, and we're getting hugs, receiving hugs, hugging a baby, hugging a person, you know, that is something that mitigates our adrenal fatigue as well, in spite of all the stress that's happening. So if you can think of one thing that makes you really, really happy, if you can do that this weekend, that will be my ask of you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next Friday. Bye for now.